And the apostles had every reason to be used. They walked with Jesus for 3 years. They heard Jesus. They sat there and listened to the Sermon on the Mount that we read so often. And yet Paul says, I have labored more than all of them. And he goes on to say, not I, but the grace of God in me. And there may be people that you have every advantage over. You may have more money. You may have more free time. You may have more opportunity. You may have more of a position. And yet you look at them, and they are being used for the kingdom of God in a much more mighty way than you. And the reason is God's got part of you, He's got all of them. He's got part of you and He's got all of them, and God is using them. His grace is everything about them. By the grace of God, they are what they are. And it's the only explanation for their life. Is there any area of your life that you can put that to the test in, that you've been living for yourself, and you're going to say, God, all right, I'm going to give this over to you. I'm going to see what grace can do. And then watch what God will do with a surrendered life to Him. Or are you just kind of living like you've always lived? Grace hasn't even left a ripple on your life, even though you profess to have gone through this change, this great change in life of making a profession in faith to Christ. Charles Dickens wrote a story years ago called The Tale of Two Cities. And in there he talks about a medical doctor who during the French Revolution was made a prisoner. And he was 20 years he was a prisoner. And he could not practice medicine while he was a prisoner, and so he began to learn the trade of a cobbler. He would fix shoes for other prisoners. And every night you could hear up in his cell this tap, tap, tapping of him repairing these shoes of these prisoners. Well, after 20 years, the revolution ended and he was set free. But he couldn't cope with freedom. He couldn't deal with the brightness of the sun or the openness of the world. And he went home, and he had built in his attic a room, the exact dimensions of his jail cell. And every night he would have a servant take him up there, lock him inside, and you could hear him through the night with his tap, tap, tapping. All of a sudden he had freedom, and yet he chose to go back to the same lifestyle that he had been set free from. And you say, that's a crazy story. Why would that ever happen? Well, I see it every day. You share with people the freedom that comes through Jesus Christ. You see people make a decision, and then you see them go right back to the same life that they were a part of before. Grace has set you free. Do not go back to the same things. Do not in your own way just sit there and tap, just repeat the deeds of the old man.